The arrival. The crystalline spires of the Galactic Academy pierced the lavender sky of Nexus Prime, their iridescent surfaces reflecting the light of 3 setting suns. Amid the bustle of aliens from 1,000 worlds, a small transport shuttle touched down on one of the Academy's numerous landing pads. As its doors hissed open, a solitary figure emerged, blinking in the alien twilight. Zara Chen, the first human exchange student in the Academy's 10,000-year history, took her first breath of Nexus Prime's atmosphere. The air tasted faintly of cinnamon and ozone, an odd combination that made her sneeze. Several nearby aliens turned to stare, their compound eyes, sensory stalks, and other exotic sensory organs fixating on her with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. Clutching her datapad, Zara straightened her shoulders and strode towards the towering entrance of the Academy's main hall. Her heart raced with a cocktail of excitement and anxiety. She'd trained for years for this opportunity, studying xenobiology, advanced physics, and a dozen alien languages. But now, standing on alien soil light years from Earth, she felt woefully unprepared. As she approached the entrance, a holographic interface sprang to life. Species identification required, it chirped in galactic standard. Zara cleared her throat and spoke clearly. Human, Earth, Sol System. There was a prolonged pause, longer than seemed necessary. Finally, the interface responded, species recognized. Caution, primitive classification. Limited access granted. The massive doors slid open with a soft hum. Zara frowned at the primitive label but pushed her annoyance aside. She was here to learn, to prove that humanity deserved a place among the stars. As she stepped into the cavernous main hall, the alienness of her surroundings hit her full force. Streams of data flowed through the air in vibrant holograms. Gravity seemed to shift and ripple, allowing various species to move in 3 dimensions with ease. Beings of all shapes and sizes bustled about, some floating, others slithering, a few seemingly facing in and out of reality. A tall, willowy alien with skin like polished obsidian glided towards her. "Greetings, human," it said, its voice resonating directly in Zara's mind. "I am Sandri, your assigned orientation guide. Please follow me." As they moved through the Academy, Sandri's telepathic voice provided a running commentary. The Galactic Academy has stood as the pinnacle of knowledge and discovery for eons. Here, the brightest minds from across the cosmos come to push the boundaries of science, philosophy, and understanding. Zara nodded, trying to take it all in. "It's incredible," she managed, her voice sounding small and out of place. "I'm honored to be here." Sandri's head tilted, an expression Zara couldn't quite read crossing its featureless face. "Yes, quite. Your presence here is unprecedented. Many were surprised by your species' petition for inclusion." Before Zara could respond, they arrived at a door that shifted and swirled like quicksilver. "Your quarters," Sandri announced. "You will find them adapted to your unique physiological needs." The door parted, revealing a small but comfortable room. To Zara's relief, it contained recognizable furniture, a bed, a desk, chairs, alongside more alien contraptions she couldn't begin to fathom. "Your classes begin at the rise of the first sun," Sandri informed her. "Do not be late. The Academy values punctuality across all temporal paradigms." With that, the alien glided away, leaving Zara alone in her new home. As the reality of her situation settled in, Zara felt a wave of homesickness wash over her. She was literally the only human in this vast alien institution. The weight of representing her entire species pressed down on her shoulders. Shaking off her doubts, Zara began to unpack. As she did, she came across a small holophoto of her family back on Earth. Their proud, smiling faces renewed her determination. She was here to prove that humanity belonged among the stars, that they had something valuable to contribute to the galactic community. The next morning, if the rapid cycle of light and dark on this alien world could be called that, Zara made her way to her first class. advanced multidimensional calculus. As she entered the lecture hall, conversations hushed, and all manner of alien eyes turned to stare at her. Zara squared her shoulders and found an empty seat. The lecturer, a being that seemed to be made of pure energy contained within a translucent exoskeleton, began the class without preamble. Holographic equations blossomed in the air, twisting and shifting in ways that made Zara's head spin. As the lecture progressed, Zara found herself struggling to keep up. The base concepts were familiar, but the alien professor moved at a blistering pace, delving into mathematical dimensions Zara had never even considered. Beside her, a squat, reptilian alien with 4 arms effortlessly manipulated the holographic equations, solving problems faster than Zara could even comprehend them. Feeling a flush of embarrassment, Zara redoubled her efforts to understand. By the end of the class, Zara's head was pounding, and she felt more out of her depth than ever. As students filed out, she overheard snippets of conversation in various alien tongues. Her universal translator struggled to keep up, but she caught enough to realize they were talking about her. Primitive species. How did it even qualify? Waste of a learning slot. Zara's cheeks burned, but she held her head high as she left the classroom. This was only the beginning, she reminded herself. She had to prove herself, not just for her own sake, but for all of humanity. As she navigated the shifting corridors of the academy, Zara quite literally bumped into her next challenge. A gelatinous being oozed around the corner, its transparent body housing swirling organs and pulsating with bioluminescence. "Watch where you're secreting, solid," the alien burbled indignantly. "I'm so sorry," Zara apologized, trying to step around the amorphous being. But as she moved, the alien seemed to flow in the same direction, resulting in another collision. Typical primitive motor control, the alien gurgled. "I suppose I shouldn't expect better from a species that still relies on rigid appendages for locomotion." Zara bit back a retort, reminding herself that she was here as a diplomat as much as a student. "I apologize again," she said, forcing a smile. "I'm still adjusting to the Academy's unique environment. Perhaps you could show me the most efficient way to navigate these corridors." The alien's bioluminescence flickered in what Zara hoped was surprise. After a moment, it responded, "Very well, solid. Observe." With that, the gelatinous being began to flow along the wall, using subtle shifts in its mass to propel itself forward. Zara watched carefully, noting how the alien interacted with nearly invisible currents in the air and subtle changes in the corridor's gravitational field. While she couldn't replicate the alien's fluid movement, she realized she could use these environmental cues to navigate more effectively. Thanking the alien, Zara continued on her way, this time moving with more confidence. She arrived at her next class, xenobiology and adaptive physiology, just as the final sun dipped below the horizon. As she settled into her seat, Zara felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps she could find a way to adapt, to thrive in this alien environment. It wouldn't be easy, but then again, nothing worthwhile ever was. Little did Zara know, her greatest challenges and opportunities were yet to come. As the stars wheeled overhead and the vast machinery of the Galactic Academy hummed around her, the stage was set for a series of events that would not only change her life but potentially reshape the future of humanity's place in the cosmos. Cultural clashes. As days stretched into weeks at the Galactic Academy, Zara found herself in a constant state of adaptation. Every interaction, every class, every meal in the vast, multi-environmental cafeteria presented new challenges and opportunities for misunderstanding. One particularly memorable incident occurred during a practical session in quantum entanglement engineering. The class was tasked with creating a stable micro-wormhole, a feat that was apparently considered rudimentary by Academy standards. Zara's lab partner, a crystalline being named Sixlith, vibrated with impatience as Zara struggled to manipulate the delicate quantum fields. "Your species' reliance on physical interaction is painfully inefficient," Sixlith chimed, its voice a tinkling of crystal fragments. Simply attune your consciousness to the quantum foam and direct it with your thoughts. Zara gritted her teeth, sweat beading on her forehead as she concentrated on the holographic interface. "I'm trying," she muttered, "but humans don't exactly have natural quantum manipulation abilities." Zixlith's crystalline structure flickered in what Zara had come to recognize as exasperation. "Primitives," it muttered, a term Zara was growing increasingly tired of hearing. Frustration building, Zara decided to try a different approach. Instead of following the prescribed method, she began to input a series of calculations into the system, drawing on her knowledge of classical physics and improvising where her understanding of quantum mechanics fell short. "What are you doing?" Zixlith chimed in alarm. "That's not the correct procedure." But before the crystalline being could intervene, a small, stable wormhole flickered into existence between their workstations. It wasn't as elegant as the others in the class, but it was functional. The instructor, a being of pure energy contained within a hovering metallic sphere, drifted over to inspect their work. "Interesting," it hummed. "An unorthodox approach, but effective. Perhaps there is something to be said for alternative perspectives." Zara beamed with pride, while Zixlith's crystals took on a slightly duller hue. It was a small victory, but one that bolstered Zara's confidence. She was starting to find her footing in this alien world. However, not all of Zara's attempts at adaptation were as successful. The Academy's social structure was a complex web of interspecies etiquette and unspoken rules that she was only beginning to unravel. The instructor, a being of pure energy contained within a hovering metallic sphere, drifted over to inspect their work. "Interesting," it hummed. "An unorthodox approach, but effective. Perhaps there is something to be said for alternative perspectives." Zara beamed with pride, while Zixlith's crystals took on a slightly duller hue. It was a small victory, but one that bolstered Zara's confidence. She was starting to find her footing in this alien world. However, not all of Zara's attempts at adaptation were as successful. The Academy's social structure was a complex web of interspecies etiquette and unspoken rules that she was only beginning to unravel. One evening, Zara decided to join a group of her classmates in the Academy's recreational area, a vast space that shifted and changed to accommodate the diverse needs of its students. As she approached, she overheard a heated debate about galactic politics. "The Proxima Centauri situation is clearly a violation of the Galactic Accord," argued a towering insectoid being, its mandibles clicking in agitation. "Your perspective is limited by your species' linear perception of causality," rebutted a shimmering cloud of sentient gas. "In the grand tapestry of spacetime, the conflict has already been resolved." Eager to participate and showcase humanity's diplomatic potential, Zara chimed in. "On Earth, we have a saying, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Perhaps by examining historical conflicts, we could find a solution." The conversation screeched to a halt. All eyes, sensory stalks, and other alien organs turned to stare at her. "Earth," the insectoid clicked. "Isn't that the planet still debating the merits of clean energy?" The gaseous being rippled in what might have been laughter. "How quaint. The human thinks to lecture us on galactic affairs." Zara felt her face flush hot with embarrassment. "I didn't mean to lecture," she stammered. "I just thought." "Perhaps," interrupted a new voice, belonging to a serpentine creature with iridescent scales, "the human should concern itself with matters more suited to its level of development. I hear they're still grappling with the concept of faster-than-light travel." The group's laughter, in all its alien variations, cut Zara to the core. She retreated hastily, her eyes stinging with unshed tears of frustration and humiliation. Back in her quarters, Zara paced restlessly. She had known it would be challenging, but the constant reminders of humanity's primitive status were wearing her down. How could she prove humanity's worth if she wasn't even given a chance? As she mulled over her predicament, her datapad chimed with an incoming message. It was from Professor Xenra, her xenanthropology instructor. "Zara Chen, Your presence is requested in Laboratory 17B at the rise of the second sun. An intriguing anomaly has been detected, and your unique perspective may prove valuable." Intrigued and a little apprehensive, Zara made her way to the specified laboratory the next day. As she entered, she found Professor Xenra, a being composed of swirling bioluminescent tendrils, hovering over a peculiar artifact. "Ah, human Zara," Xenra's tendrils pulsed in greeting. "Thank you for coming. We've encountered a puzzle that has stymied our best minds, and I wondered if perhaps a less advanced perspective might yield insights." Zara bristled at the backhanded compliment but approached the artifact nonetheless. It appeared to be a cube of some dark, opalescent material covered in intricate, shifting patterns. "We believe it to be a data storage device from a long-extinct civilization," Senra explained, "but we've been unable to decipher its mechanism or access its contents." Zara examined the cube carefully, her mind racing. The patterns seemed familiar somehow, reminiscent of something she'd seen back on Earth. Then it hit her. "It's a puzzle box," she exclaimed. "Like the ones we have on Earth. You don't use technology to open it. You have to manipulate it physically, in the right sequence." Senra's tendrils writhed in surprise. Physical manipulation. How primitive. And yet intriguing. "Please demonstrate." With careful, deliberate movements, Zara began to shift and slide different sections of the cube. It was far more complex than any puzzle box she'd encountered on Earth, but the underlying principle seemed to be the same. After several tense minutes, there was a soft click, and the cube unfolded like a blossoming flower, revealing a core of pulsating energy. The laboratory erupted in a flurry of excited alien chatter. Zenra's tendrils glowed brightly. "Remarkable. It seems we've underestimated the value of manual problem-solving. Well done, human Zara." As word of Zara's achievement spread through the academy, she noticed a subtle shift in how she was perceived. There were still plenty of skeptics and those who looked down on her primitive species, but others began to show genuine curiosity about human perspectives and abilities. Zara realized that she didn't need to try to be like the other species at the academy. Humanity's unique viewpoint, their ability to think outside the box, quite literally, in this case, was precisely what made them valuable. As she left the laboratory that day, head held high, Zara felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was no longer just struggling to keep up. She was here to show the galaxy what humanity could offer. Little did she know, her newfound confidence would soon be put to the ultimate test as a crisis loomed on the horizon, one that would challenge not just Zara, but the entire Galactic Academy, and force everyone to reconsider their preconceptions about primitive species. The cosmic crisis. The day began like any other at the Galactic Academy, with the rise of the first sun casting a pale green light across the crystalline spires. Zara was deep in concentration, poring over a particularly challenging assignment on transdimensional physics, when the first tremor shook the building. At first, she dismissed it as part of the Academy's ever-shifting architecture. But when a second, more violent tremor followed, accompanied by a wailing alarm she'd never heard before, Zara knew something was terribly wrong. The holographic displays throughout her quarters flickered to life, showing the stern face of Chancellor Xylos, the Academy's amoeboid leader. "Attention all students and faculty," the Chancellor's voice resonated telepathically. "We are facing an unprecedented crisis. A quantum singularity has formed in the nearby Vortex Nebula, and it's expanding at an alarming rate. If left unchecked, it threatens not only Nexus Prime, but potentially the entire sector." Zara's heart raced as she absorbed the news. A quantum singularity. She'd studied them theoretically, but the idea of one forming spontaneously and growing to such a dangerous size seemed impossible. The Chancellor continued, "All non-essential personnel are to evacuate immediately. Our top scientists are working on a solution, but we must prepare for all contingencies." As alarms blared and students of all species rushed through the corridors, Zara found herself swept along in the tide of panic. The usually orderly academy had descended into chaos, with even the most advanced beings struggling to maintain composure. Amidst the frenzy, Zara spotted a familiar crystalline form. Zixlith, she called out, pushing against the flow to reach her former lab partner. The crystalline being's facets flickered in recognition. Human Zara, it chimed, its usual haughtiness replaced by a tremor of fear. This is most disturbing. Such an event should be statistically impossible. What exactly is happening? Zara asked as they moved together towards the evacuation points. I know what a quantum singularity is in theory, but Zixlith's crystals pulsed in agitation. It's a rupture in the fabric of space-time, growing exponentially. Our most advanced simulations predict total stellar collapse within 72 standard hours if it's not contained. The gravity of the situation hit Zara like a physical blow. Entire star systems, possibly even the Academy itself, could be swallowed up. Billions of lives were at stake. As they neared the evacuation ships, Zara made a split-second decision. Instead of boarding, she turned and began pushing her way back into the Academy. Human Zara. Zixlith chimed in alarm. Where are you going? It's not safe. I can't just leave, Zara called back. There has to be something we can do to help. Despite its apparent reluctance, Zixlith hesitated, then followed her. Your species' penchant for irrational behavior is apparently contagious, it muttered. Together, they made their way to the central research hub, where a group of the Academy's most brilliant minds had gathered. Holograms flickered with complex equations and real-time models of the expanding singularity. Chancellor of Silos noticed their arrival, its amorphous form rippling with surprise. Student Zara, Student Zixlith, you should be evacuating with the others. With respect, Chancellor, Zara said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice, we want to help. There has to be something we can do. The Chancellor's form wavered, considering, your courage is admirable, but I'm not sure how you could possibly. Let them stay, interrupted a gravelly voice. Professor Xecha, a cephalopod-like being known for his groundbreaking work in quantum mechanics, undulated forward. At this point, we need all the perspectives we can get, even unconventional ones. As the scientists resumed their frantic work, Zara and Zixlith were quickly brought up to speed. The situation was even direr than they'd realized. Conventional methods of containing quantum singularities were failing, and the rupture was growing faster than anyone had anticipated. The problem, Professor Xecha explained, his tentacles gesticulating wildly, is that we can't get close enough to deploy a containment field without being torn apart by the gravitational forces, and remote deployment lacks the precision needed for such a delicate operation. Zara's mind raced, trying to apply everything she'd learned at the Academy to this impossible problem. As the aliens around her debated increasingly esoteric solutions, a wild idea began to form in her mind. What if, she said, her voice barely above a whisper at first, what if we don't try to contain it from the outside? What if we go in? The room fell silent, all attention turning to her. Explain, Chancellor Psylos prompted, its form rippling with intrigue. Zara took a deep breath. On Earth, we have a saying, fight fire with fire. What if we created our own, controlled quantum singularity and used it to counteract the wild one, like a controlled burn to stop a wildfire? The silence stretched for a moment longer before the room erupted in a cacophony of alien voices. Preposterous. The energy requirements alone, the risks are incalculable. But Professor Xecha's tentacles were writhing with excitement. It's brilliant in its insanity, he gurgled. A quantum singularity could theoretically navigate the extreme conditions around the rupture. But the precision required to generate and control such a thing, that's where Zixlith comes in, Zara said, turning to her crystalline classmate. Your species' natural affinity for quantum manipulation could be the key. Zixlith's crystals flickered rapidly, a sign of intense computation. It's theoretically possible, it finally chimed. But the calculations would need to be perfect. The slightest error could tear the fabric of reality itself. Chancellor Xylos undulated thoughtfully. The risks are enormous, but so too is the threat we face. Professor Xesha, assemble a team. We'll pursue this controlled burn strategy alongside our other efforts. As the research hub burst into renewed activity, Zara felt a mix of exhilaration and terror. Her wild idea might just save billions of lives, or doom them all. The next few hours were a blur of frantic calculations, simulations, and preparations. Zara worked alongside beings whose intelligence dwarfed her own, yet her unique human perspective continued to provide valuable insights. As they refined the plan, a sobering reality emerged. Someone would need to pilot the device generating the controlled singularity. The extreme conditions and need for split-second adjustments meant it couldn't be done remotely. "I'll do it," Zara volunteered, her voice surprisingly calm despite the fear churning in her gut. "Absolutely not." Chancellor Xylos rippled firmly. "The chances of survival are minimal. I cannot in good conscience." "With respect, Chancellor," Zara interrupted, "I'm the logical choice. My physiology is more resilient to extreme conditions than most species here, thanks to Earth's varied environments. And more importantly, this was my idea. I should be the one to see it through." A tense silence fell over the room. Even those who had previously dismissed Zara as a primitive were looking at her with newfound respect. Finally, Professor Xesha spoke, his voice uncharacteristically solemn. "The human is right. If anyone has a chance of pulling this off, it's her." As preparations for the mission kicked into high gear, Zara felt a strange calm settle over her. Whatever happened next, she had proven that humanity deserved its place among the stars. And just maybe, she was about to save the galaxy. Little did Zara know, her greatest challenge was yet to come. As she prepared to face the quantum singularity, the fate of countless worlds resting on her shoulders, the true test of humanity's place in the cosmos was about to begin. Humanity's stand. The launch bay of the Galactic Academy hummed with tense energy as final preparations were made for Zara's desperate mission. The craft she would pilot was unlike anything she had ever seen, a sleek, almost organic-looking vessel that seemed to shimmer and shift as if it wasn't quite solid. "The Quantum Weaver," Professor Xesha explained, his tentacles gently caressing the ship's hull. Designed to navigate the extreme conditions near the singularity, it's partially phase-shifted, allowing it to exist simultaneously in multiple quantum states. Zara nodded, trying to project confidence despite the butterflies in her stomach. She had spent the last few hours in intensive training, her mind crammed with more information than she thought possible to absorb in such a short time. As she prepared to board, Zixlith approached, its crystalline form vibrating with an emotion Zara couldn't quite identify. "Human Zara," it chimed. I believe the correct human expression is good luck. Your plan is either brilliant or insane, possibly both." Zara managed a small smile. "Thanks, Zixlith. That means a lot." Chancellor Xylos undulated forward, its amorphous form somehow conveying gravitas. "Zara Chen of Earth, you carry with you the hopes of countless beings across the galaxy. Whatever the outcome, know that you have proven humanity's worth many times over." With a final nod to her alien colleagues, Zara boarded the Quantum Weaver. As the hatch sealed behind her, she took a deep breath, centering herself. The interior of the ship was a bewildering array of holographic interfaces and controls that seemed to respond as much to thought as to physical interaction. "Quantum Weaver, you are cleared for launch," came the voice of Mission Control. "May the cosmic forces be with you." With a thought and a touch, Zara initiated the launch sequence. The ship hummed to life around her, and she felt a momentary sensation of existence in multiple places at once as it phase-shifted. Then, with a silent flash, they were away. The journey to the expanding singularity took mere minutes, but to Zara, it felt like an eternity. As they approached, the viewport filled with a sight both terrifying and awe-inspiring, a swirling vortex of absolute darkness, surrounded by a maelstrom of torn spacetime and quantum foam. Cosmic forces, Zara breathed, momentarily overwhelmed by the scale of what she faced. The ship's systems chimed a warning as they entered the outer edges of the singularity's influence. Gravitational forces began to spike, and reality itself seemed to warp around them. Zara gritted her teeth, focusing on the task at hand. Initiating quantum field generation, she reported, her fingers dancing across holographic controls. The ship shuddered as it began to generate its own miniature singularity, a controlled version of the cosmic monster they faced. As they drew closer to the heart of the anomaly, communications with the Academy began to break down. Static filled the channels, interspersed with fragments of panicked voices. Zara was on her own. The quantum weaver bucked and twisted as competing gravitational forces threatened to tear it apart. Warning klaxons blared as systems began to fail under the immense strain. Sweat beaded on Zara's brow as she fought to keep the ship stable and the quantum field aligned. "Come on," she muttered through clenched teeth. "Just a little closer." Suddenly, a massive gravitational wave struck the ship, sending it spinning. Zara's head slammed against the control panel, and for a moment, darkness threatened to overtake her. She shook it off, tasting blood where she'd bitten her lip. As her vision cleared, Zara saw that the quantum field was destabilizing. If it collapsed, the mission would fail, and she would be torn apart by the singularity's immense forces. In that moment of crisis, Zara did something that no amount of alien technology or advanced training could have prepared her for. She improvised. Drawing on her unique human intuition and her academy training, Zara began to manually adjust the quantum field, feeling her way through the process in a way that defied purely logical analysis. It was part science, part art, and wholly human. To her amazement, it worked. The field stabilized, growing stronger as she guided the ship closer to the heart of the anomaly. As they reached the critical point, Zara took a deep breath and initiated the final sequence. "Here goes everything," she whispered. The controlled singularity pulsed, reaching out to connect with its wild counterpart. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a silent flash that seemed to reverberate through every atom of Zara's being, the two singularities merged. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The wild singularity began to shrink, its voracious appetite turned in upon itself. Zara watched in awe as the fabric of spacetime began to knit itself back together. But the danger wasn't over. As the singularities merged, the gravitational forces increased exponentially. The quantum weaver groaned under the strain, systems failing left and right. Zara fought with every ounce of her strength and skill to keep the ship intact and on course. Come on," she urged both to herself and the ship. "Just a little longer." With a final reality-bending pulse, the merged singularities collapsed in on themselves, leaving behind nothing but normal, stable space. The sudden absence of gravitational forces sent the quantum weaver tumbling, its systems fritzing and dying. As emergency power flickered on, Zara slumped in her seat, exhausted but elated. She had done it. Against all odds, a human from Earth had saved the galaxy. It took several hours for a rescue ship to reach her, hours spent drifting in the eerie calm of the newly stabilized space. As she was brought aboard the Academy vessel, Zara was greeted by a sight she never expected, a standing ovation from beings of 100 different species. Chancellor Xylo's undulated forward, its form shimmering with what Zara now recognized as deep emotion. "Zara Chen of Earth," it intoned, "you have done the impossible. You have saved not just the Academy, but countless worlds. The galaxy owes you a debt it can never repay." As the ship carried them back to Nexus Prime, Zara looked out at the star-studded expanse of space. She had come to the Academy to prove humanity's worth, to show that they deserved a place among the stars. In facing this crisis, she had done far more than that. She had shown the galaxy that sometimes it took a human perspective to solve an impossible problem. The implications of her actions were only beginning to sink in. humanity's standing in the galactic community would never be the same. As Nexus Prime grew larger in the viewport, Zara knew that a new chapter was beginning, not just for her, but for her entire species. The age of humanity's isolation was over. The stars, with all their wonders and challenges, were now truly within reach. Part 5. A New Understanding. In the days following the quantum singularity crisis, the Galactic Academy buzzed with a new energy. Zara found herself at the center of attention, not as a curiosity or a primitive, but as a celebrated hero. The shift in perspective was palpable. Chancellor Xylos called a grand assembly, gathering all species present at the Academy. As Zara stood on the stage, looking out at the sea of alien faces, she felt a profound sense of change in the air. Today, Chancellor Xylos began, its form rippling with solemnity. We recognize not just the heroic actions of Zara Chen, but the potential of humanity as a whole. We have been reminded that true wisdom comes not from technological advancement alone, but from diversity of thought and experience. The Chancellor paused, its next words resonating through the hall. It is my honor to announce that Earth will be granted full membership in the Galactic Council, effective immediately. A chorus of cheers in myriad alien vocalizations filled the air. Zara stood, stunned and overwhelmed. This was more than she had ever dreamed possible when she first arrived at the Academy. In the following weeks, as news spread across the galaxy, Zara found herself flooded with messages from Earth. Humanity was ecstatic, celebrating their newfound place in the galactic community. But with this honor came great responsibility, a fact not lost on Zara or the leaders of Earth. As she prepared for her return journey to Earth, now as an official ambassador, Zara reflected on her time at the Academy. She had arrived feeling small and out of place, desperate to prove humanity's worth. She was leaving with the knowledge that humanity's unique perspective was not just valuable, but vital to the tapestry of galactic civilization. Zixlith approached her as she packed, its crystalline form glittering with an emotion Zara now recognized as respect. "Human Zara," it chimed, "I must admit I had my doubts about your species. But you have shown us all that there is more than one path to wisdom. The galaxy will be watching Earth's progress with great interest." Zara smiled, extending her hand in the human gesture of friendship. After a moment's hesitation, Zixlith extended a crystalline appendage to meet it. As her ship prepared for departure, Zara took one last look at the shimmering spires of the Galactic Academy. She had come here to learn, but in the end, she had also become a teacher. The future was bright with possibility, not just for her, but for all of humanity.